we have noticed that uh, there has been an acknowledgement that young people have been missing in the discussion tables. So there has been like certain platforms that have been created for young people to engage. Like for instance, PANCAP has developed or formed a youth steering committee or a youth committee. And what the beauty about this is that we have young people from almost every English-speaking Caribbean country in this platform. So this has given us the ability for us to um, learn more from each other, but also like provide us tools where we can advocate for issues when it comes to comprehensive sexuality education, age of consent for access of services, and also laws that protect young people. Also, this is a great opportunity for us because we have now been able to access high-level meetings. You know, we had representatives at PAHO, we have representatives within CARICOM, and this youth committee also has representatives from the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors, which is something very unique because us like representing key populations, we know what's the reality at the ground level. We know what's affecting young people, what's affecting MSM, what's affecting trans persons. And then the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors, they provide us this platform where we can connect with ministers or with representatives of CARICOM. As young people, as a young gay man, as representative of a key population, we still face discrimination. We come to a setting and, you know, like everybody might give you the eye, or like you're walking around, you do not feel comfortable coming and engaging in an audience because maybe you're not comfortable with yourself, or maybe you're afraid of what people will think about you. And also, like the system itself does not promote civil engagement of young key populations in the sense that we have like very poor support from the education system or the health system when it comes to like us being healthy, us being like well informed about decisions that we have to make. So this can affect the confidence of a young person to be able to like move from one point to a point like in this forum where we can feel comfortable engaging.
The priority areas that they outlined are they wanted capacity building for young people, they wanted awareness building of their specific needs, they wanted meaningful engagement, and they wanted strategic partnership to further the work of key population youth. Unfortunately, we have not been able to bring forward and actually activated this network, but through the steering committee and through those persons who have participated, we have had ongoing dialogue and have been developing a number of products out of that meeting. One of the products that we have developed, I heard Kevin mention it earlier, we have developed a mapping of all the youth stakeholders in the Caribbean. So we have mapped out all the organizations that are led by young people or serving young people within most of the English-speaking Caribbean as well as Suriname. We were not able to get that for the Dominican Republic because of translation issues. And it is through this network, this database that we've developed, that we intend on engaging persons to do in-country engagement and advocacy and start the movement. Youth participation was a big issue because a lot of young people, especially those belonging to key population youth, felt like over the years they've been used when it comes on to participation. They've been invited to spaces and basically put in a corner so that their names can appear on register and say that young people was there. And they didn't feel like there was any meaningful engagement. And even when they did become defiant and made input, the inputs were not appreciated or valid. Under the current Global Fund grant, we have been doing some social accountability workshops with young PLHIV. That is scaling up some work that was previously done under the Round 9 grant. Currently, we have done that training in Jamaica with some of the organizations working with YPLHIV. That's Jamaica Network of Seropositive, for Life, JCW Plus, among others. And we recently completed that in Trinidad through ComTalk. And that has been really good. The aim of that is to get young people to understand what the quality of service that they should be getting, and how they're able to audit and hold these service providers accountable.
A lot of times we're invited just to be a face or just to make up numbers, and we want to move away from that. We want to be included in the planning of events, included and our input actually taken into account. Not just, oh, they said something, oh, they came here, oh, we listened to them. We want our voices to actually mean something in the discussions that we're a part of. We want to know that the people, and check in. So when it's a discussion, oh yes, they were there, they said something, but do we actually feel that we're being listened to? That's important part of making sure that we're moving away from this tokenism that has been prevalent amongst youth participation. So it's more than just inviting to the table. It's like I said, including us in the planning and actually training us to be capable of participating at a higher level. So I believe the training is an important aspect of this. You can't just expect to just throw young people into a situation and say, okay, flourish. It needs to be a situation where there is continued training. And right now it's very ad hoc, especially because of funding. So there are 3 training sessions or an afternoon of empowerment for young people. And that empowerment isn't sustainable. So when it's done in this fashion, we're just leaving a group of people and saying, okay, so you're empowered now, go forth. We can't continue doing that. We need to have sustainable youth involvement in all aspects of youth development. So it needs to include, as you're saying, trans youth, just generally LGBT youth, young people living with HIV. It needs to be an inclusive human rights approach that includes all of us and actually has our voices heard.
We are excluded from our governments. We have no plan. They have no plan for youth in the Caribbean from governments. We're not on their agenda. They compass us into one general youth, male, female, exclusive of trans youth. So this is something that we need to work on. There's high prevalence of HIV amongst trans youth, as you see the data shows. And I think what it is we need more collaboration with CSOs working specifically with trans youth identities, gender non-conforming identities. Some of the issues facing in trans communities and trans youth is homelessness, due to the fact that parents throw them out at a very young age, so they become very vulnerable to men and women who are infected by HIV, and they prey upon these individuals. Also, there's this sex work that they start at a very young age that makes them susceptible to contracting the HIV virus. Trans youth being key population. When we talk about youth, we talk about a certain age bracket, and if you know gender identity starts from a child. So when a parent or a child comes to his parent and say, I am a man, but biologically they were born a female, it's difficult for the parent to comprehend that. They put them in the category of sexual orientation instead of gender identity. So I think now the spaces must be created for trans persons. I am a self-identified trans woman, to speak up and speak for trans youth, to talk about our issues for ourselves, the things that we face growing up in the Caribbean context of trans persons. Also, there's no access to mental health services. As a trans person growing up, I was subject to conversion therapy as a trans youth. And this is the Caribbean context of trans youth and what we face. The first thing they're gonna put me in is to a church, pray the demons out, and then they're gonna take me to the Sandilands Rehabilitation Center. This is what we're subject to in the Caribbean. Also, SRH services, definitely not available for trans youth. Speaking about that services, our needs are totally different. Our needs are totally different from other person's needs, and that needs to be recognized. All it is that we need to now include trans youth, hear the voices of trans youth. From a school level, they're thrown out of schools. Also, there's a mass migration of our trans youth moving to countries. Families are losing their children to other countries based on the gender identity. There's no laws, there's no protections, and sometimes it's a safety mechanism also. So my thing today is that there are spaces that needs to be created for trans youth, and I am one of the voices, starting with UC Trans, to be able to bring forth the information needed as it relates to trans youth in our Caribbean context.
I do not think that it was an accurate representation of the reality when you stated that trans don't have a voice even in spaces like these. The very fact that you're here, but you are aware, for example, that there are many other trans persons in this room. At all the various PANCAP meetings, we have made all effort to ensure that trans are represented. You are the co-chair of the PANCAP Regional Youth Steering Committee for Sexual and Reproductive Health. And it's important, and you have an opportunity to shape the agenda, isn't it? Yourself and Kevin were the ones who planned the last youth meeting with the other young people, provide the leadership. It was an excellent meeting. We were extremely proud of the fact that we did not have to be involved other than provide the administrative support. You have decided that you will work with each other to do the monitoring so you have a sense of what young people are doing at the national level. I believe that as I reflect on the assessment of the partnership that was done recently as part of the assessment of the evaluation of the CRSF, it was found that our civil society organizations said they felt empowered at the regional level. The challenge has been what has been happening at the national level. Myself and Dr. Shanti Singh spent 2 weeks in CARICOM working right through with every unit within the CARICOM Secretariat to work with them to see how they can integrate into what we do into their work program, and recognizing the critical importance of working, institutionalizing the work that young people are doing within the national response.
We have spaces here regionally, but when it reaches our country level, there are difficulties and there are barriers when you start to talk about trans youth. And because of the laws and barriers related to our country context, the climate of 16 years old, you can consent to sex, and at 18 years old, that's when you can access services with an adult. So the barriers I'm talking about and spaces is within the country's context. PANCAP has made available spaces for trans youth and also CVC. So my direction was toward national spaces. When we get back in countries, those are the barriers we face. I applaud PANCAP and I applaud CVC for making the spaces available for us.
We also have to be mindful that we have the same discussion because we also box young people into talking about the same things all the time in the same way. And so, which is why I think Derek must also be a little bit mindful about this idea of tokenism, because I agree with Alexis. It doesn't matter if we create these spaces for young people and their chairs and co-chairs, etc. If we do not help them to break down the power dynamics, then we're going to always have the same challenges all the time. So, and I think we're all guilty of the same thing in here. And so I'd like to refer people to organizations like J Style, etc., which had done work with young people effectively in Jamaica and build young people to really take charge of their own affairs. And I don't think we're really doing that within the HIV response, which is why we have the same challenges.
The strategy that we have of linking our civil society to the national AIDS programs through the National AIDS Program and Key Partners meeting and the continued engagement through our Knowledge for Health project is really creating opportunities for that kind of dialogue. As I said, myself and Dr. Shanti Singh spent time at CARICOM asking them so that when they get into countries also to help to facilitate that kind of dialogue that needs to happen so that this response can be integrated at the national level. Because yes, we're empowering people at the regional level, and then when they get to the national level, it could become very frustrated. So we have to ensure that mechanisms are in place to facilitate the kind of advocacy that needs to happen at the country level.
My question goes to the Dominican activists. There's never been a relationship between the Asian and Dominican LGBT organization due to a language barrier and many other issues. I would like to know, how do you intend to fill that gap, to build that relationship, to build a network, as we have a lot of young Asians studying in the Dominican Republic, and the youth of those two countries are facing the same issue relating to stigma and discrimination and exclusion. And besides those young people studying the Dominican Republic, we have those who are fleeing the country, those young people who are fleeing the country because of violence, stigma and discrimination in the healthcare system. I would like to know how your service accessible to those young Asian gays living in the Dominican Republic.
Que proactividad dentro de la comunidad donde yo vivo y el municipio completo tenemos trabajando en 3 comunidades batellanas. Dentro de esos jóvenes tenemos hijos de haitianos, los cuales están involucrados en el trabajo de juventud en proactividad. Hay otras organizaciones que no trabajo ahí, pero que sí también trabajan. De los jóvenes que vienen de Haití para República Dominicana, de los que pertenecen a la comunidad, por lo menos de donde yo vivo, sí se integran en las actividades que nosotros hacemos, tanto de VIH, salud sexual y reproductiva, y también con el tema de documentación también se le dan orientaciones para que estén regularizados por lo menos.
En el idioma, como es una población batellana, tenemos migrantes haitianos que hablan perfectamente el idioma español. Entonces, lo que hacemos es una estrategia. Si un migrante reside en nuestro país reciente y no sabe hablar el español, lo que hacemos es que escogemos a un batellano que sepa hablar perfectamente el español y nos sirva de traductor para darle los mensajes claves a esa persona. Y así poder ayudarle en los diferentes tipos de problemas y darle los mensajes que necesite y los materiales educativos y demás cosas. O sea, de una desventaja hacemos una ventaja, que es escoger a uno de los compañeros que saben el idioma perfectamente de ambos países y nos pueda servir de traductor.
We come back to the same issues year after year. As you get older, another group comes in and it's the same thing. So we really have to look at the role you play in terms of advocacy. One of the things that I was concerned that didn't come out in Marlon's question is the impact of the laws, especially age of consent, as it relates to your access to services. And that's something that we need to talk about because you have a significant role there to play in terms of your advocacy. Because in Trinidad and Tobago, for instance, you cannot access services under 18 years of age, right? And the healthcare providers are using it to their advantage not to provide services because they think that they are going to be charged $15,000 if they do not report a youth. I also believe, though, that it is the interpretation of the law. And it is not so much that they are unable to access services because people are thinking that once they appear before them and they're underage, they immediately have to report them. So I think you need to seek clarification of that law as well. You need to ask for the implementation of the Gillick competency model, which is linked with the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which allows you to access services once we can interpret that you are aware of what you are doing, you are aware of the consequences, and that you are not denied services.
When it comes to the age of consent for access of services, a lot of the countries have been reviewing the Montevideo Consensus, which talks to access of services right there. In the context of Belize, for instance, young people can access services below the age of 18, but it's based on the discretion of the healthcare provider. So it's very important to do sensitization with healthcare providers on the Montevideo Consensus and the importance of talking and offering these services.
I did some research with homeless LGBT youth, and one of the things that I found striking was how very clear one particular trans young lady was about survival sex and sex work, and that she was doing sex work, and anybody who wanted to exploit her for sex, that she was clear that I was not going to do that, and if we've encountered that kind of dynamic.
When you're thrown out of your home, you have to eat. You have to pay for a hotel room. You have to be able to take medication. If I'm an HIV positive, I need food. So I have to do what I have to do to get food to take my medication. So that's considered survival sex. For most trans persons, it's survival sex to get hormone treatment. You understand? So that's what's the difference between their survival sex when you talk about survival sex, being thrown out of a home on a beach from a young age. So that's the difference with that. And back to the age of consent, we have sat with PANCAP, we have sat with the cohort, and ministers are signing on to these things and they're agreeing. The thing about it is we have to hold them accountable. And I come from an advocacy standpoint, that's why you see I'm so whatever, but when I go in these spaces, it's not just to sit down, it's to advocate, but when I get back home in country, that's when the work starts for me. I could be a part of this regional network and be protected, but my girls in Jamaica, my girls in Barbados, my girls in Trinidad still can't get to their leaders because of these barriers of persons who are working with us. Not they're blocking us, but because of the structural barriers of who are LGBTI people. Governments don't want to touch that. And we have to be radical advocates and say, we have LGBTI youth in country. Some of you in here, if your child comes to you today and say they're LGBTI, some of you might freak out, even though you're doing the work. That's our Caribbean context, and that's our reality.
Accountable, and that is key, because we have to be held accountable to the people that we serve, and we also have to be held accountable to those who are providing us with funding support. We have to be transparent. So we cannot engage in practices under the table. We have to be as transparent as we possibly can. We have to be responsive to change, because nothing is static. And therefore, even as we recognize the critical need to transform the way we do things, we have to ensure that everyone is on board so that collectively we can respond to the changing environment. We need to be effective and efficient. So, because if we are doing what we do without results, it does not make sense that we continue to do that. We have to be efficient because we have very limited resources now. And therefore, there is need for greater efficiency. So we have to look at several options and look at the most efficient, but also what would allow us to achieve the specific objective. Equitable, which speaks really about fairness. And this is very, very critical. We have to be able to treat each other fairly. So it is not a case where we treat one lot of people who are our clients differently to the way we treat others. We have to treat our co-workers, in some cases if we are the leaders, in terms of our employees, equally. We have to treat them with fairness. And critically, we also have to be inclusive. Everyone has to feel included. And that again is your workforce, your volunteers, as well as the clients that you serve need to feel inclusive.
When we think of social contracting, the truth is the government cannot afford JESSA. The government cannot afford to take on the full budget of Jamaica Aid Support for Life. And they will not either. They will not, because some of the work that we do, they would rather us not do it, especially around our enabling environment and human rights pieces of work. It's not the piece that they love us for, because it's the piece that we have to use to call them out, and to hold them accountable. And so how is it that they're going to ever give us funding to tell them you are doing foolishness? No. So the expectation cannot be that we're going to look to the government to fulfill all our needs when the main donors go. So we're starting off right there. But social contracting has its place. So for example, the posture of the Jamaican government, I think it has always been the posture. It is not around providing funding to NGOs. Somehow I think in the psyche, in all my much years now, 8 years of engaging the government, it's always this expectation that the international partners will support the work of support the non-government aspects of the work. And we've had to challenge our government. But I can tell you, maybe Ivan has more insight than I do since he chairs the CCM. They are not at that place. I don't find them at that place where they're talking about taking on responsibility for the civil society components of the response. And so, as civil society organizations, we must, though, bear that in mind. How is it that we're going to advocate that they somehow contribute, understanding that they cannot give us all that we would require? We do not depend on the Global Fund and PEPFAR only to support the work of Jamaica AIDS Support for Life. We are very aggressive in finding grant funding. Very aggressive. Like literally I have 2 grant proposals that my team, you need to come out of this meeting and read this proposal now, kind of an aggressive. They will spend their nights writing proposals. Once the money is out there and that call comes across our computer, it means some of us not going to sleep because we're going to frame something out of our strategic plan to go for that. And, a lot of times we do hit. A lot of times we get, small grants, not so small grants, not $10,000 grants. We go for the grants that we think will help us to move forward an agenda in a real way. So we do aggressive grant writing.
The only reason why government ought to fund anybody outside of government is to ensure that the service that government has an obligation to provide is being provided. So when I was president of the National Youth Council in St. Lucia, one of the things we did was we had government pay the National Youth Council to do all leadership training to all youth organizations in St. Lucia, separate and apart to our subvention, which we used to get. So we were contracted to do that. And something that they had to do, they were not doing it well. We were better equipped to do it. And so we did that. And that's something that people do. If you're doing social contracting, as Candace said, focus on 1 or 2 aspects that you know that you do better. You have a comparative advantage and have them fund that. But Derek mentioned, and we spoke about, and Brad is talking about all of these business models and what Proactividad is doing, etc. We have to be careful that when we start going into the question of doing business, that we're moving from a non-profit status to is how you use the profits, in other words, determines what your status is. But we have to be careful that we don't start operating like a business because we're not in it for profit. The profits have to be channeled back into the organization and the work that we do. But key to that is for every business, the accountability becomes a little higher. And Derek's presentation is very relevant for that. Then you must now put the systems in place for you to be accountable. It'll be even more stringent when you start going into business model type activities.
Jamaica is it's a little complex. So we love to talk about social responsibility from our private sector, and I'm sure they do. But the truth is they run away from anything that says LGBTI, HIV, AIDS. They find it easier to give you a one-off donation of $50,000, or even for the very good ones that will give us $100,000 around the children. But they don't want that level of sustained engagement with the organization, and that's something we need to break down. So we need some advocacy and we need to build our skills to talk more the language of the private sector. Around tourism, I can tell you, most of the persons that at Jamaica AIDS Support for Life that utilizes our services, they either work in the tourism industry or they plan to work in the tourism industry. Yes. Or, call centers, and our community, tourism is our blood. So once you go to my St. James, St. Anne, that side of the island, most persons work in the hospitality industry. In fact, we now have 50 young LGBTI users of Justice Service being trained in level 1 tourism, tour guiding and all these things with TPDCO. Because it serves us when they gain employment, and the tourism sector is one of the main employers. So I am very interested to see how to build on that piece of work. And we do a lot of work for the tourism sector here. We go into hotels, we test, we do sensitization, we train staff for free.
Sí, es muy cierto que una línea muy fina y delicada en la rendición de cuentas cuando hablamos porque... por ejemplo, en República Dominicana la figura de empresa social no existe. Entonces, se tiene que configurar a nivel de una empresa tradicional Y eso conlleva, aparte de declaración de impuestos, tiene un trato diferente porque no estamos exentos y ya obviamente no somos sin fines de lucro. Ya tenemos un lucro y se tiene que tener cuidado cómo se maneja ese beneficio. Nosotros por eso decidimos crear una empresa independiente y que dentro de sus estatutos tiene establecido el porcentaje y lo que va para la colaboración y el trabajo social, de acuerdo al marco legal que tiene la República Dominicana de responsabilidad social corporativa. Ese porcentaje entonces puede destinarse porque también, un poco más de cuidado, puede prestarse al tema de lavado de activos y otras situaciones diferentes si todas las ganancias se disponen a el bien social. Se puede también malinterpretar a nivel de la contabilidad. Entonces, sí es verdad que debemos empujar la sostenibilidad, pero se tienen que establecer las políticas claras de cómo se van a manejar esas ganancias para que la organización después no se pueda ver envuelto en otro tema de rendición de cuentas o fraude.
As we work with young people, we realize that a lot of the bullying starts at home, and people are dependent on their family structure for money, and so they have to stay within that family structure, because they're dependent. So we ventured in the tourism industry as to give them independence to move away from that. However, so we managed to get scholarships for young people to get trained as tour guides. So they were motivated, but there's really like other issues that are affecting their development within the tourism sector, like maybe identity, how to navigate the system. So my question is, what kind of support systems did you guys provide to the persons that you're engaging in the tourism sector? And also, like, how do you go about mobilizing the tourism sector? For instance, in Belize, our immigration laws like prohibit the entry of people that are LGBTI, for instance, and the environment is not like so LGBT friendly. How did you go about mobilizing the tourism sector?
Pero apegado a eso, ellos tienen la apertura de apoyar a la comunidad y de apoyar a que se fomente esa formación a jóvenes, independientemente de su orientación sexual o identidad de género. Otra cosa que sí hicimos, aunque nos acercamos a las grandes cadenas hoteleras, es que como cuando entraban a los programas de pasantía, teníamos una pequeña jornada de sensibilización a los empleados con los que ellos iban a trabajar. Porque entendemos que obviamente a veces no están adecuados. Si hubo, por ejemplo, que en una de las cortes había una chica trans, varias chicas trans, es verdad que no están acostumbrados a trabajar con una chica trans. Pueden haber una situación de transfobia, de homofobia, de no sentirse cómodo a la hora de estar en un mismo espacio. Y se daban esas jornadas de sensibilización apegado a esas políticas que casi todas las empresas del sector turismo, porque normalmente son extranjeras, entonces ellos hacen valer esas normas a nivel local y eso nos permitía sensibilizar. Y como mencionábamos también en la línea de base, teníamos ese miedo, pero cuando tú te vas a la realidad, a veces la gente solamente hay que confrontarla y uno cree que existe ese miedo al rechazo o a esa discriminación, que no es tan así. Ya a la hora, cuando la gente entiende, se abre. Y se tenía ese miedo y no, cuando los jóvenes se identificaban, iban a los entrenamientos, había realmente una apertura y el nivel de rechazo era bastante limitado. Entonces, básicamente, las empresas tienen esas normas, esas políticas y están en disponibilidad de apoyar y jugando un poco de su juego. Bueno, ellos también eso le apoya a ellos a hacer publicidad, de que también están haciendo algo social y nosotros nos beneficiamos de eso. Entonces es un juego de ganar-ganar.
I would say that the forum was really, really interesting for me, looking at all of the different issues that civil society has to deal with, hearing some of the issues for civil society around sustainability. It's sustainability of civil society activity is always something that is discussed, but the way it was discussed in this forum was very different for me because it looked at different aspects of sustainability, and I was especially interested in the resource mobilization and how the community discussed being able to sustain its own activities by partnering with persons from the community to be able to sustain the work.
It was really good. It was very insightful, especially in our country that we are working right now on our new project, in our new proposal to the Global Fund. It's very useful because it deals a lot with social contracting, which is one of the main topics being discussed here at the forum. And I think all the insights and what has been learned from the Caribbean experience, especially in Jamaica through JASL, has really contributed to what we can really do and learn from them so that we could have a successful implementation of our social contracting model.
Friends to Life is one of the earlier organizations that joined CBC. This was way back. I think we did it. Robert Carr was there, and it was somewhere in one of these hotels in Montego Bay. But what was significant about it, of course, is seeing the progression, and most certainly kind of learning that CBC is now the principal recipient of the Global Fund grant. I think that was the more phenomenal I think milestones that we've got to.
I have a lot of take back to family planning and to also for the Trans Coalition, TT Trans. The first thing is the incident reporting. I was fortunate to do some work for CBC on that project within the last 90 days that ended in September the 30th. I had 43 persons documented and that we interviewed for incident report. That I'm going to actually follow up. It's going to be psychosocial support, mental health, it's going to be HIV, stigma and discrimination, and a list of other things that we documented on. The general feedback is how I'm going to actually support these persons now, seeing that this has come to an end. It's not the end for the work we are doing, but it's the beginning of what we're going to do with these persons and how we are going to facilitate them and who we are going to collaborate with in the country. Is it the UNHCR, FBA, Ministry of Health, government? Who are we going to be actually working with? And I was really impressed with the data and the feedback. And it gave me a sense of directions as to where I'm going now with these cases that has been documented and to see how best we can facilitate them.
All of us have similar issues going on in each country, and all of us have advanced in some way, and all of us keep supporting each other and contributing to each other's response in each country by learning it through this forum and sharing ideas and bringing all the knowledge to the table from the region. So I think it's something that really sticks because even though we are different or separated by the Atlantic, we still have some sort of connection and some sort of similarities, and we can work together to better our response and the lives of the people we serve.
In Trinidad and Tobago, we have an increase of youth, especially migrants, that is not getting access to HIV meds and testing and treatment. And, they're being violated of their human rights, general human rights, and even victimized in where the work experience is concerned. They get underpay and all these things. We have documented this, and within the Youth Forum, I understood that we have to do so much more, and it is not going to stop. So we have to find a way how we can make these people understand that they need to document, and why they need to document is because it is necessary. That's the only, without data, we would not know there is nothing happening.
The key things that I would take back home would be the importance of equal playing field in terms of the true partnership between civil society and government, the importance of that partnership, the difference, the variance in terms of the investment that you could make and the impact that civil society can make in terms of some of the work it does in particular areas versus what government can do. And by true partnership, then we are able to achieve the goals that we would want to achieve in a much better way.
When I began to think about how we need to think differently about how do we keep these organizations sustainable. And that might mean opening a for-profit side or for-profit arm of the organization. It's kind of been there. You think about it as an NGO that we need to be able to make money, but it has never really been so concrete that we say we need to have a business arm or profit-making section in our organization to help fund our social activism or social services work. And that is, I think, what I'm going to go home and make sure it kind of gets cemented in the minds of the other persons in my organization.
Coming out of these conversations, for us, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, a lot of things that we can do, innovations that we can actually engage around. And we're going to just move steadfastly to getting them done. But we're going to need your support and we're going to need your continued enthusiasm.